Today is Sunday, December 15th, 2019, and this is episode 242 of the Defensive Security Podcast. My name is Jerry Bell, and joining me tonight, as always, is Mr. Andrew Callett.
Good evening, Jerry. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. The question is, how are you?
You know, I'm happy to report that soon we can stop talking about my health. Because I had my final surgery just under 2 weeks ago, and I've been home for a little over a week, and so far, all my parts are working as designed, and I'm healing up nicely. And I got some big new open wounds that need to heal, but all my plumbing's back together. All the Lego pieces went back together, and looks like I'm going to make it.
So now you have some cool stories and even more cool scars.
Oh my God, you have no idea. I'm going to have to make up some very interesting stories about sword fights and in the subcontinent to defend nuns being attacked by mercenaries or something. You should. The scars are gnarly, but yeah, no, I'm doing good. In fact, I'm hoping to even go back to work after the first of the year if my doctors will sign off on it. So, I'm actually surprisingly from death's door all the way back to almost 100%.
That's fantastic. You look good. You sound good.
Thanks.
So,
thanks.
Welcome back to.
Your mom said the same thing.
Oh, God. Yeah, you are back. Great.
And, how are you? I know that you were traveling and work's been crazy, but you hanging in there?
I am. Work is, I think that's part of the job description of executive, right? It's just perpetual craziness. And then I got to go to Disneyland, so that was quite awesome. And, I'm feeling all rested up and ready to go back to reality now. So at any point on your trip, did anyone say, "Is there a cybersecurity executive aboard?" There was no such opportunity. No. I'm sorry. Someday. Someday maybe. Anyway,
you can step forward and say, "I'm a cybersecurity executive."
That's right.
How can I audit you today?
That's right. So a couple of housekeeping things. Actually, more of an announcement today. Well, it's not really today. It was more like last week. Is 7 years for this podcast. So
wow,
that's pretty cool.
That's pretty impressive. Congratulations.
Yeah. Well, likewise.
Yeah.
And then a reminder that we really, really appreciate the Patreon donors. Thank you very much.
Sorry, my mute was stuck. Yes, you guys are awesome. Thank you. Seriously.
Absolutely. And then finally, the thoughts and opinions, whatever. So getting into stories, I found two interesting stories that I call the tale of two ransomware infections. Both in Louisiana. I know, right? Really, I missed my calling.
You did, yeah. Maybe we can get him writing like Hallmark greeting cards for lesser-known holidays.
Sorry for your ransomware attack.
I hope this card brings you comfort as you restore your backups.
That's right. So the first one comes from, it's actually a local news channel. It's WWLO, I think, is the station. And the title is New Orleans Government Goes into Recovery Mode After Cyber Attack. And so last Friday, which is just as we record this two days ago, it's unclear what variant of ransomware they were affected by, but the New Orleans City had what appears to be a pretty significant ransomware infection.
And this is not to be confused with the state of Louisiana that also had its own separate incident.
Which we will talk about next. That's
okay.
Right.
Okay.
That's right. So I say that this one appears like it was managed really well. The mayor very quickly came out and declared a state of emergency for the city. all appearances are that the IT team for the city pretty quickly investigated and identified what happened and how it happened, and got into recovery mode. And so the reason I actually quoted this particular story versus others in ZDNet and Ars Technica and others is there's a lot of detail about what they actually are going through. So it talks about how right now they're in the process, the city's in the process of reimaging their systems. As there are other stories not referenced in this one about how they announced over the loudspeakers in City Hall to have everybody shut off their computers, and apparently that worked quite well, and the damage this was described in this story and others was quite limited. But even so, they have what appears to be a very tight process. I mean, they're already back and restoring data, and it sounds like, at least from the statements they made, that they've lost very little, if any, data as a result of the attack.
Disruption of services, certainly, though.
Correct, but it appears like they're probably going to be open for business. When they go back to work tomorrow.
I do find it interesting that they were able to contact all the employees in a secondary line of communication to get everybody to shut down their computers quickly.
Yeah.
And that makes me think of, is that something that most organizations have the capability to do, especially if you're spread out, multiple locations, work from home, remote, many offices, relying on email as your primary means of communication. Maybe it's good to establish something like a call tree or an emergency contact call-out system to call people on their cell phones to notify them of this sort of thing. It seems to save their bacon to being able to get to shut down right away. Yeah,
clearly so. Now, granted, their environment is relatively small. I mean, in the scheme of things, it's 4,000, apparently 4,000 computers they shut off, which is, it's a sizable environment, but not as big as the state of Louisiana, which we'll talk about next. But I think you're right. I would imagine, though, that they probably do have other. I can't imagine that they're all co-located in one location. I mean, New Orleans is a very large city, and I have to believe that they have multiple, at least minimally multiple offices. So the net point I wanted to bring up here is that it appears that the city of New Orleans thought this through and had a plan, and then they executed on their plan. And so I say kudos to them.
Yeah, that's what we often talk about, which is great.
I mean, it's unfortunate that it happened. And apparently, by the way, they haven't said exactly how it happened, but the means of entry was through stolen user ID and password. So it's unclear if that's, through phishing or through, credential reuse type attack. So, or
even brute force or credential stuffing, who knows?
Exactly.
But so somebody got access to somebody's account, and then spread. Yeah, we don't know. We don't know if they came in through some sort of VPN, if they came in through how they got into the environment. But
my money's on RDP, but that's just me. So.
Probably.
Yeah. All right. So then you contrast that with what happened in the state of Louisiana. And this next story is from Ars Technica, and the title is Hacker's Paradise, Louisiana's Ransomware Disaster Far From Over. And this is now almost a month old. This attack happened back in mid-November. And it's a RIAC infection, which has been the bane of many organizations lately. And it appears, they talk about the triple threat, which is TrickBot, Emotet, and RIAC, which a lot of organizations have been wrestling with. And this is all appearances are that this is what happened to the state of Louisiana. Now, I think it's somewhat at this point pedestrian the type of ransomware and exactly how it propagated and whatnot, because they all seem to work the same way. They harvest credentials and propagate using my favorite thing in the world, Active Directory. I had to just get that jab in.
I'm going to get you a tattoo
yes.
one of these days, showing your love of Active Directory.
Yes.
Maybe right on your bicep.
Big heart with 80 right in the middle.
Yep.
So now the big difference here is that it took quite some time, and I think I'm not even sure that they're actually still fully recovered yet. But I think it was 2 weeks. This particular article here was almost 2 weeks after the attack happened, and the Office of Motor Vehicles hadn't yet opened, or hadn't yet reopened. And when they did reopen, they were only going to be opening limited offices. And then there were claims of data loss in the Office of Motor Vehicles, and then a subsequent rebuttal by the state government. But there does appear, and I don't think this has been refuted, that the Medicaid system in Louisiana lost at least 6 months worth of data because their data center vendor was not apparently backing up their data properly.
Ouch.
Yeah. So again, this is the thing I wanted to point out is how things can go. It always sucks. Let's face it. No one ever wants to be in this spot. The best thing is to avoid it in the first place. But it is becoming increasingly difficult, as we've talked about many times in the past. It's becoming really, really difficult to lock all the doors and block all the windows. So, it really comes down to our ability to react and respond and recover from these types of attacks. And again, just highlights, this is becoming, and really already is, just an amazingly pervasive issue for many businesses. And if you don't take it seriously and have a plan, make sure your backups work, you're going to get bit.
Yeah. That was the one point I was going to say that you just hit on, which is you've got to confirm those backups are good. Yeah. Even if you got a third party handling it, you better double check.
Right. If you don't, if you're not testing it, you don't have backups. Even if you think that they're running, you don't. So test. And it's, by the way, that's not an easy thing to do. It's resource, it's very resource intensive, costs sometimes lots of money to have a place to restore to and whatnot. So, but it'll save your bacon, and not just from ransomware, by the way. I mean, there's lots of other catastrophes that could happen where you'll need to recover from. So, yeah.
We've had plenty of stories of malicious insiders deleting critical data on their way out the door, or other instances. So yeah, backups are not just for a checkbox. They really do help.
Yeah. Now having said that, we've talked about in the past couple of shows. I didn't include it in this week's show, but I'll just make a quick mention of it. The city of Pensacola, Florida, was also dealing with the Maze ransomware. And Maze is the one, if you'll recall, I think it was the city of Johannesburg, and there was one other whose name escapes me right now, where they not only encrypt your data in the traditional ransomware way, but they also steal your data. So before they encrypt it, they steal it, and the idea is, or the intention is, that they really want you to pay. And so if you don't pay, they start releasing your data. And apparently in the city of Pensacola, they actually did start releasing data. I don't know exactly how much, but it's...
Which, might seem like a viable recovery strategy, just waiting for them to release all your data publicly.
Well, that's a good point.
I don't recommend it. There's probably going to be some PR fallout, and they're usually not going to do it on your schedule.
It's not a great backup strategy.
No, their SLAs for releasing your data is just not great, not very reliable at all.
I do wonder if there's a strategy there for dealing with these adversaries. Just tell them, well, hurry up and release it because we need the copy.
Yeah, if you could release this one particular document,
really soon, yeah.
Yeah, we kind of need that one.
Yeah, that'd be good. So yeah. Anyway, tactics are changing. It's no longer all about just backing it up. The adversaries are becoming more and more focused on monetizing, and as people are and organizations are more able to recover their data, they have to resort to tactics like that, which will help raise the level of payment. And
I think going into 2020, this is just going to get worse,
absolutely.
more pervasive.
Absolutely.
It's a hella useful technique for the bad guys, and they make a lot of money at it, so they're going to keep it up.
Absolutely. All right, and then the final story for tonight comes from CSO Online, and the title is "How a Nuclear Plant Got Hacked."
That sounds very ominous.
It does sound ominous, and it has some stock picture with the nuclear warning sign overlaid on top of a data center. It is really quite ominous. So there's a nuclear plant in India called the Kandukulam, I think is how you say it, nuclear power plant. I'll just call it KNPP. Was hacked, and the way it was disclosed was apparently how most things are disclosed these days on Twitter. And
not by the organization that got hacked.
Not by exactly why that would be silly for them to do.
Well,
Yep. So so somebody announced that they were aware of a breach of this power plant, and then shortly after the government regulator for nuclear power in India refuted that claim and said absolutely not. It's totally air-gapped. Yeah, where have we heard this before?
Say it with me now, kids. It's not possible.
It's totally air-gapped. So anyway, later on they did retract that statement and conceded that yes, in fact, this plant was hit. Now, the article does put a lot of focus on the point that this was apparently the North Koreans, or all indications are that it is the North Koreans, because of the type of malware that was used. But a couple things. One is there was nothing particularly specific about nuclear power plants. It was customized for this particular nuclear power plant, but as far as I can tell, based on the article, it was really the administrative portion, like the kind of the back office, user network, and it did have hard-coded credentials and IP addresses, which does smack of advanced persistent threats. But
so that tells us that the bad guys must have been doing recon originally in some way, shape, or form.
Correct.
To know the hard code username, passwords, and internal IP addresses, and then come back with, this modified code to directly target them.
Exactly. But I would like to point out, for the record, that this is exactly how Ryuk works. So it's not,
sure.
This is not the exclusive domain of advanced, nation state APTs. This is a pretty.
And anytime a specific group is connected to specific IOCs or specific tactics, in general, nothing stops another organization from adopting those same tactics or IOCs, either intentionally as a false flag or as a, hey, that's a good idea. It's very rare that any of this stuff is proprietary once it gets well known.
Absolutely. I mean, you got all these security companies writing blogs about what they found, and you got to imagine, both other nation states and organized crime gangs are reading those blogs. Not that I don't think that those blogs should be written. It's just that they learn from each other. Like, if it's a good idea, why not? Why wouldn't you do it?
Well, and this is what makes attribution so difficult. And why I think for most of us in the trenches, attribution is typically not all that useful to us because it doesn't change our job. But executives always want to know. And I think there's a bit of a perversive incentive being built around this attribution model where, for lack of a good answer, we come up with our best possible answer. And the reality gets abstracted away into, well, it was the North Koreans, or it was, APZ-10, or it was, and in general, most of the time, I think that's difficult to prove. But, not to go down a rat hole, but I guess my fundamental point here is be cautious of those sorts of determinations and know that there's nothing very proprietary about a lot of this most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah. They do point out that there's no obvious reason that North Korea would want to attack India. I mean, because they don't have a particularly adversarial relationship with each other. But, again, as they point out, it could be a false flag or it could just be a matter of convenience. So,
but let's say it was North Korea, and let's say it was their state-sponsored group. Maybe they're just practicing.
I had the same thought. You got to imagine that they have, they probably got tiers of people who are going through the ranks, and they have to prove their mettle.
This is why it gets tough to really, although it's the sexy thing in the industry right now is, what is your attacker thinking? What are they doing? Why are they doing it? Sometimes it's really tough to know. And unless you're going to get, folks arrested, put in jail, and get full confessions out of them, we're just guessing most of the time.
Yeah, I think the counterpoint that I often hear is if you can do a decent job of attribution, you sometimes can figure out what their motivation is, and that will lead you to figure out are they gonna keep coming back, or are they what specific types of data are they looking for, so you can heighten your acuity in certain monitoring certain areas and things like that. So I mean, it's not entirely unreasonable, but in general I think you're right. It is not entirely all that productive in my mind. So
I know others feel differently. It's just my particular soapbox.
Yep. So the other thing was this was apparently perpetrated through the highly advanced technique of using infected versions of 7-zip and VNC installers.
No. Is that even possible?
Which, again, there's no real indication of how that went down, but I kind of wonder, just given the totality of this article, I kind of wonder if this was just this particular nuclear plant getting caught up in a big net.
So as in the original infection or compromise was random, and
yeah, exactly.
Then they targeted it based on just, hey, we got into somebody interesting, let's just go for it.
Exactly. We heard what was it last show or the show before about the bank in Cayman, right, where the bad guy said he wasn't out to target them, he just happened to come across their that they were running a vulnerable VPN server, and they looked interesting. So I mean, it's not unheard of.
Yeah, not everything is a easily packaged up motivation.
Yeah, but I do think this is the I suspect the industrialization of cyber attacks. And I'm sure that's not a term that I just coined. But
we've seen other stories of sites selling access to distinct entities.
Exactly.
Hey, I've got a foothold in RBC Corporation. I'm making that up. Anybody want it? Buy it from me for $100 or whatever it's going for.
Right.
So
somebody's out there pushing infected 7-zip and VNC installers and then they sell the resulting access to to some third party. And that seems more likely to me based on the details that's in this article, which, by the way, doesn't negate the possibility that the adversary that they found was in fact a nation state. That those two things can both be true at the same time. A nation state can buy access from a commercial commercial hacking gang. So that's not unheard of. So anyway, I think the point of this is that we really have to do a better job of instrumenting our network, because again, in my mind, I think this is not, at least it didn't start off as a particularly complex attack, but certainly appears to be trending in that direction. As they point out in this article, it seems unlikely that this was going to lead to the North Koreans causing a meltdown of the nuclear power plant here, just because of what was infected. But it's again what we saw in Israel. In Iran. Wrong country. Oops. Even if they are air gapped, there are ways around that. USB
it's rare that anything is really, truly, fully air gapped and unreachable.
Right. So yeah, you have to rely on someone plugging a USB drive from the not air gapped computer into the air gapped computer, and there you go. So anyhow, know your risks.
You make it sound so simple.
Yeah, well, that's why we get paid the big bucks, right?
Well, you may be, but I've been out of work for 9 months, so I don't know.
That's true.
I've been an unemployed bum.
A lot of stuff has changed since,
Well,
you may have heard about the cloud.
No. No. My cats occasionally fart really bad, and there's like a cloud.
Oh, dear. It's just like that, except there's computers.
Wow, that sounds painful. No, to be clear, I'm not unemployed. I just am on long-term leave of absence. So it's not like if anybody out there is worried I don't have a job. I do. I just am not healthy enough to go back. But I will soon. So.
Soon, yep.
Worry not, my friends.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I think that's enough nonsense for one day. So
I agree. And I'll look into that cloud thing.
Yeah, I recommend it highly.
Is there like a Wikipedia article or anything on it I can read?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes. I'll cloud?
I'll Bing that up.
Good idea. Pull up the old Alta Vista. All right. Well, thanks everyone. I'm glad you're doing.
Jeeves.
I'm glad you're doing well, Mandy.
I am. Thank you.
It's good to see you back healthy. So, anyway, we'll talk again soon. As we talked about before, we'll be hopefully much more regular now.
Yeah, and everybody, hope you have a great week. I think I might be at an event in Atlanta coming up in middle of January. I need to confirm it, but I might have a public sighting. You can come out and yell at me in person for all my stupid ideas if you like. Or maybe next show I'll put out the details once we get that confirmed. So, a little teaser for you.
Awesome. Good to hear. Okay. Look forward to it. All right. Thanks again, everyone. Have a great week. Happy holidays. And we'll talk again soon.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.